Hey, everybody, and welcome to Wholesale Change. It's the webcast and podcast from Distribution Strategy Group, where we offer thought leadership and software to wholesale change agents like you. Because if you're on this show, you are no doubt a wholesale change agent. My name's Ian Heller with Distribution Strategy Group, accompanied as usual by my brilliant and glamorous co-host and business partner,
Now,
Jonathan
I'm,
Bine.
I'm going to stop you right there, Ian. You just published a book that has only 5-star ratings on Amazon about
Oh my
AI and science fiction. So this "who's the smartest guy in the room" thing is emphatically settled with the publication of that book.
No. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I hope you all run out and buy my book now. Thanks, Jonathan. Commission's on the way. I have 42 friends. They all gave me 42 5-star ratings. Or they all gave me 5-star ratings. What can I say? Um, hey man, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm really excited for today's discussion. Question for you: did you notice that I added something to our company descriptor in the opening remarks?
It was a 2-syllable word.
Software.
Software.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. We used to just do thought leadership. Now we do thought leadership and software. We have 3 software products. Give us the 1 minute description, Jonathan.
All very analytically focused. One on how do you both measure and improve customer satisfaction. Another related on how you both measure and improve employee experience and satisfaction and engagement. And a third on how do you estimate wallet share, or what some people call white space, in not only customers, but your prospect accounts in total and by product category.
These are killer systems. Jonathan led the development of all of them, and it's got our combined, I don't know, 50 years of experience and more built into it. So you should go to our website, distributionstrategy.com, and take a look.
There's
Hey,
some there's some scar tissue in there.
there is some scar tissue in there. Hey, another thing coming up, you do not want to miss our upcoming conference, Applied AI for Distributors. It's June 24th through 26th in Chicago. It's really about how to apply AI to drive more profits, to drive efficiency, to drive sales. It's going to be an incredible event. Looks like we have about 30 technology companies who are going to tell you the AI tools that they offer to improve your business in every way. We've got this incredible speaker lineup. Noel Russell was just rated the #1 global thought leader on agentic AI. Trent Gillespie did a lot of last mile work and other work for Amazon. Don Sarno is the head SVP Digital Enterprise of North America for Sonopar. Janice Zelenka, who's the host on today's show, is one of the most brilliant people I've ever worked with anywhere, including in distribution, of course. And she's been a CFO and CIO at the same time for 2 enormous organizations. Paul Kennedy is a legend in the industry, CEO at DSG Supply. Tracy Dool over at Bostwick Braun is a CIO, brilliant guy. Dina Stanton is at Kyndryl, used to work at Stericycle for Janet, now does a lot of work around compensation and human and talent strategy. And Jamie Head, who's the brilliant CIO at Partstown Unlimited. So, I mean, this is an incredible speaker lineup. I mean, it's the only major live conference about AI in the industry. You really can't miss it. And if you're going to, send someone else so that your company's represented. Tickets are selling fast. We will sell out this conference, so sign up today. Today's show is brought to you by Epicor, a software company that has helped thousands of wholesale distributors for over 50 years to integrate their business functions into one ERP system. Because of their deep experience in distribution, they understand your world and your unique challenges. Epicor ERPs are designed to help you operate more efficiently today while preparing you for whatever comes next. They will transform your ERP from a system of record to a system of insights and action with easy to use, practical, outcome focused, and responsible AI. Epicor solutions provide distributors like you with a consolidated ERP that is ready to use out of the box and allows for long-term growth. If you're interested in new technology, they'd love to chat with you to understand what you're looking for. You can reach out at epicor.com/distribution. That's epicor.com/distribution. If you're in the market for an ERP and you're in a distribution company, Epicor really should be on your consideration set. All right, let's bring in our guest. We're delighted, thrilled to have with us today my friend and former colleague on the board of Summit Electric, Janet Zelenka. Janet, how are you today, my friend?
I am great. Thank you. Excited to be here today.
Good, good. Well, we had a really interesting pre-call. We got a lot of good stuff to discuss, and I didn't actually prepare you for this, but let me spring this on you. Why don't you tour us through your background? Go through, how you, your career and your career progression and what you're doing these days.
Sure. So I think trucks and logistics have been part of the career for the longest time. Started Ameritech. We became part of AT&T for 16 years, and Ascendant, which was United Stationers, for 15 years, ending up as the CFO and CIO of Ascendant. And then lastly was 5 years at Stericycle as CFO and then CIO together. And then I'm on three boards, some which have distribution and manufacturing. One is Ideal Industries, the other is US Venture, and the third, which is a new board added, is public board, FTI Consulting.
Fantastic. Well, there I could tell you when Jen and I were on the Summit Electric board together, and I remember like the first couple of meetings, I'm like, who is this person? I mean, you're so smart and experienced and capable. I mean, it was real. I learned so much from you in those board positions, Janet. I thought I knew a little something about distribution, having been in it for a long time, but man, it was a real educational experience and pleasure working with you on the Summit Electric board.
Thank you, Ian. Ditto.
Yeah. Good. So you're doing a panel for us at our upcoming conference, Applied AI for Distributors. Why don't you walk us through what that panel is, and then we'll have some discussion about those topics and related topics. And I would invite anyone on the call to please send in your questions, and we can run them by Janet
Yeah.
during this conversation.
So the gist of the panel is that AI, artificial intelligence, needs human intelligence too. And how do you blend those two together to optimize value differentiation for your company? And how do you make sure that the human intelligence side continues to be a key strategic advantage, and you don't inadvertently displace it with what you think is a replication of that, and where AI can fit into that whole ecosystem?
So, and who do you have on your panel?
Well, we have Paul, we have Dina, and our two, the people that you mentioned. So great ads to what we're doing, and we have Tracy.
Right.
So that's it's going to be a really free ranging from a CEO to consultant who has tremendous tech experience to someone who's dealing with these issues in HR every day, actually for a tech company and previously worked at Stericycle. So I think that's the panel is going to fly by. And our intent is not to answer a lot of questions. It's to create the questions everyone needs to go back and ask their own organizations to think about. So I think it'll be very provocative and give people a lot of fodder to think about this and the human part of this, because AI started as a technology. So it kind of is talked a lot about a technology application, but really it's always about the people, right? And how do you do people back versus technology forward will be at the essence of the panel.
I think an interesting idea here, Janet, that you're bringing up is at the point where AI is significantly deployed, perhaps even commoditized in terms of deployment, relationships may emerge again. The human connection may emerge again as a differentiating thing in what distributors do with customers, what distributors do with humans. Thoughts?
That's exactly right. So the question that really comes is, will AI replace jobs? And I think the answer is yes. And will we still need humans to do jobs? The answer is yes. So it's really what is that mix, right? And the relationship side and the brilliance of humans for creative thought, for establishing deep emotional relationships, for having that memory of that, is really important. The other thing, I was reading a great article, what do humans do that AI will never be able to do is tangible experiences. So humans can go out in the field and touch the product. Humans can go shake a hand. Humans can walk a facility and visually see stuff that they can bring back. And I think that is what we need to free up our people to do. And I think a lot of the people who would be great at that are in very mind-numbing things to do that are consuming them when they could be spending time doing that. So that transition to hand that mind-numbing stuff off to AI, and so you can do the value differentiation parts of the job, I think are really important to what you said, Jonathan.
Could we enumerate, perhaps by department or job function, several mind-numbing things that come to mind?
Yeah, so one mind-numbing thing is a customer service rep answering the 4,000th call on I've lost my password, or I can't figure out how to get my bill downloaded, or I ordered this part 5 years ago and I need that part again, right? That is all stuff you could probably move to some sort of agent. You could even have the first call be with a human and then they hand it off to that tool to do it, right? Now, that frees them up for the more important call. I have a huge new project that I don't really know how to approach, and I have complexity with it, and I need a thingy that does a what's it, but I'm not sure what it is. And do you have something? Then that customer service rep can answer that question, right? But they're dealing with all these other things. And if you do the curve of the calls that come in, how do you free them up to do that? Salespeople, there's been so many studies of salespeople and the administrative work they do, right?
Right.
Even entering their day into a tool like Salesforce takes time and energy that you could hand off to something else so they can talk to more customers. Inventory managers, right? Dispatchers, think about dispatchers have to figure out maybe the routes every day. They could hand that off to someone else, and guess what? They could go on the routes. And they could say, well, I'm driving by all these people that I don't have any business for, and I'm going to feed that back to the salesperson because that's the tangible thing that humans could do. So those are some examples of where you can hand off that administrative work. And that's been the challenge for business for years, whether it be machine learning or an ERP or a Salesforce tool. And this just gives us another one of those to take it to the next level.
Yeah, I would also think about the things that are repetitive within each of these functions. So one of the examples you mentioned was kind of a one-off. You find something that I bought from 5 years ago. But I think a lot of what we're also seeing, particularly with AI-enabled applications, is repetitive functions. We were in the preparation for the show, we were talking about the order to cash cycle. And you want to talk about maybe that example of where ML comes in?
Yeah, so you get a check in and they forgot to enter something, but you have visual representations of all the checks, and it's amazing how many physical checks still be put in despite all our best efforts, right? A character recognition tool plus an AI intelligence can probably apply those checks without eyeballs, accurate 95%. Right. And then now you have someone look at that and make sure it looks right, and they'll learn from it. And even machine learning tools that don't have that, that character recognition maybe as much, but pattern recognition can do that as well. So you're right. I think AI can do the search of history to pull that 5 years ago thing and connect the dots. But repetitive tasks are the really low hanging fruit. And I think the reason is because AI seems to be this mystery black box at how it works. And there's actually the people that develop it sometimes go, I wonder how it's working, right? Which is scary in its way. But what they've come to, it's essentially a it's a really highly sophisticated pattern recognition tool, right? And it's based on heuristics. And the definition of a heuristic is mental shortcuts or rules of thumb that people use to make quick decisions and solve problems. So all those things that are rules of thumb and things that people are in heads that maybe but are repetitive and pattern recognitions that we as humans do, you can think about where AI can do that, right? And interestingly, AI has the same biases that people do when they use heuristics, right? Because last in, first out, they hallucinate, but that's really what it does. So if you think about, instead of AI, what the heck is that? Where do I have repetitive patterns in the business I could hand off to a tool? All of a sudden, the use cases just explode.
Let me toss a couple of other matching reconciliation repetitive tasks out. So one is the order automation. Somebody receives an order, whether it's a PDF, it's in the body of the email, it's voice message, it's a text. That's one that's very, very repetitive, mind numbing. Another one is also the problem in rebates of matching things you bought to whatever the rebate definition is. So there's this whole class of matching and reconciliation problems that AI is great at and that are otherwise mind-numbing.
You've nailed it. That's exactly right. And a lot of those sit in the balance sheet. We think about the P&L a lot, but rebates are cash, right? They do hit the balance sheet. Sometimes they're monetized on the balance sheet and then amortized. Your biggest two things are inventory and receivables, followed by payables net of rebates, right? So applying it to, and most of those involve reconciliation pattern activities to get the cash in the door faster and recognize faster. Perfect place to build pilots in a business case for. And it's not something that humans wake up every day, boy, I'm excited to do this next bank reconciliation or supplier rebate reconciliation, right? They're ready to go after the next deal.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not fun.
I don't know. It gets me out of bed in the morning, but maybe I'm different.
You are different. You're different. Hey, we have a question from the audience from Brian. Hey, he's asking, traditionally, distribution companies struggle with actually recognizing the savings from productivity. I think maybe savings from technology. The default is typically, we won't hire and we'll recognize the savings through attrition, right? Do you think that'll change with will AI productivity outpace the ability to do that with attrition?
It could. It could. Then I think you need to get ahead of the hiring model and the skill model to avoid just attrition being your way to go. And think about the roles that are in the job. So there's a building a business case, which I'll put to the side, and it's thinking strategically about what kind of workforce do you need going forward, and where do you need resources, and where do you have people doing pattern recognition work be replaced. And you got to kind of categorize all that. And then you have to have a transition plan for that. And then you kind of lay it out, right? And then you decide, I don't need the gold hammer. Maybe I need this silver or just a plain metal hammer, and I can use machine learning or something else. So then you got to go back and go, well, wait, do I have the data in place to be able to do this? So it is a complex human intelligence exercise to figure out where to put AI. And then I would pick some use cases from that and pilot and learn, because I think the best thing that humans do is learn by doing, and use those to build out the business case. So in the big idea, I think attrition is not the best tool for a business case, because you'll lose the wrong people if you don't do this right. And so, counting heads versus counting types of talent lost, I think is a pivot that businesses need to do to say this is really successful. For example, it would be awful to lose a 20-year experienced customer service rep because of this, who knows all this stuff in their head and knows every customer's name, right? But if you count that as a win from an attrition, you're missing the boat. Most turnover occurs in your newer people. So think through where you hire next and what type of skills you hire next is the key, I think, to strategic growth. The other mistake done is business cases are always done on cost savings. Cost avoidance is acceptable, but what about growth? What about cash savings? Those are all other great sources of business case development.
Yeah, and it's hard because it's more speculative, right? I mean, we face this in marketing, in my marketing career, which is that, if I propose a program and I say it's going to bring $1 million of revenue in, well, that's speculative. If I don't spend that money, for sure I've got another $1 million, right? So it's the same. So those ROI models, and you know this from your CFO past, those are hard to get past the CFO, right? That you really have to have some good evidence that if I spend this money, I'm going to get the revenues out of it. But I think it's more important than ever to learn how to do that, because
right. And pilots are a great way, or start small and prove the case. Like you don't have to blanket the world with your marketing. You could try it in a market and see if compare it to a base marketing. You could do it for 2 months, right? It's the same thing here. You can see what and iterate to it. You haven't invested a lot. And I am a big fan as a CFO of a checkbook for innovation with a very disciplined innovation process. And, people thought I was crazy, but that's because of my tech background. I don't need a business case for a pilot. I need a business case if you want to explode the pilot to a big idea. But I do need an innovation process. I once said in a conference that the head of Apple Innovation said they turned down 90% of the innovation that comes through, which was an astounding number.
Yeah.
But that was the discipline they used. It wasn't business cases. It was
Right.
trying it and seeing if it worked and got to the next phase of deployment. And I think thinking it that way could unleash some creativity.
Wow. So that's go ahead, Jonathan. But are you going to follow up on that comment? Because I think
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Would you ascribe the term or the approach of fast fail to innovation?
I would, but I actually think fail has a negative connotation to it. So sometimes I think when you do research on innovation practices, there's stage gates.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really just, I view innovation as a series of go, no goes, right? And I don't view a no as a fail. I view a no as a smart decision. And I think just so maybe it's fail, pass, fail on each of those gates. And when you get to finally launching it into, you've had all these go, no goes iterations, and they're fast, right? And that's what I think Apple and the best innovation companies do. So I don't know if it's fail fast, it's succeed fast,
Decide fast.
and take the wheat from the chaff to get the right ones to the market. That's a nuance, Jonathan, but I think it helps with the culture aspects of it. Yeah.
So this is I'm really fascinated by this because distributors aren't manufacturers. They don't have new product development muscles, right? And their services have typically developed organically, not through a service development process. So you don't have this innovation expertise that you typically have in a manufacturing company, for example. But with the rapid implementation and availability of all these AI tools, you really do need to have the ability to test them like a product development company would test things, or a company that develops services would.
That's right. And I think you need innovation even for internal efficiency innovation. I think you need to have not only a mindset. A lot of people think innovation is, I have the entrepreneurial spirit, so that means I can do whatever I want. Innovation is a very disciplined process, but you don't need an army of people. And you could actually Google or use AI to pull down great innovation models to just try these are the steps that you use. You get a committee together of 3 or 4 people, and they review it and see what they thought. You get some facts together, and you go, yes, no, we go to the next step. It's not, I put it in everywhere I've been, and it's remarkable what that does. And you get better ideas on the innovation as a team.
Well, you're creating an invitation for people to propose things.
That's right.
Yeah, you're making it part of the business. It's like when academics compete for grants, they don't do anything if the grant money's not there because they can't afford to, right?
And that goes right to the checkbook concept.
Right.
If as a CFO say, I'm going to give you X amount of money,
right,
for innovation,
right,
but you all have to build a process around using this and come up with the next best idea to use it and try it. That's different than asking for a business case from every project that comes through.
Yeah, right. Because it's a lower bar, which allows you to try more speculative things.
That's right. And it's pilot. And I say keep it small, right?
Yeah.
The smaller you keep the trials to prove it, the more you can do.
Right.
And it kind of weeds out the I have the big idea and I need X gazillion of dollars, right? And it sucks everybody dry. No,
it's very dramatic to bet the company, and it's almost always the wrong decision.
That's right. So don't bet the company, right?
No,
and what's really innovative is get frontline people in the innovation process. Yeah. So have representative, not just as the headquarters people thinking great thoughts, because invariably the greatest thoughts come closer to the customer.
Yeah, I agree. There are very, very few great ideas come from conference rooms in the headquarters office.
That's right. That's right. So, and if you're free people from the mind-numbing work, they can spend more time on the next big idea and walking around and meeting with the customers. It actually can be a very positive cycle. So I warn against the dangers of the spending too much time on the business case versus managing the financial risk with a checkbook capacity. If you use that capacity, now you got to come with a business case, right? For
Right,
me, but
right,
I
right,
can risk this much in the business for innovation
right. What a
without you, with a process, without you having to prove an ROA and an NPV on every little thing you're doing, because that stifles innovation faster than anything I've seen.
So, and that's brilliant, and it's more important than ever now with all these AI possibilities out there. So,
That's
Jonathan,
right.
you have an idea on this, right?
Yeah, I'm wondering if we look at the big blocks of where employees are in a distributor. So customer service is one of the largest. Um, Sales, what happens in the warehouse, drivers. Could we pick a couple of examples of areas where there might be innovation in these functions and just kind of play this out of what it might look like in a real company?
Yeah, so I think we use the customer service example. So clearly you can siphon off the repetitive pattern questions to a chatbot and a smarter one. You will need somebody smart to monitor it, right? To make sure it doesn't, start saying weird things to your customers. Or you get a nefarious person asking the bot something that it shouldn't share, right? But if you do all those parameters, you can siphon off a bot. So I think customer service is a key area because there's customer service and there's customer maintenance. And usually customer service does both. So can you take the pattern repetitive maintenance out of this, and they can truly provide proactive service? And I think that's a real good. I used to run a call center way back at Ameritech, so my mind explodes with the opportunities. If I could go back and go, man, if I had AI, I could have made everybody's life better. I wouldn't have had to fire a single person, and I could have driven those sales twice because we were both a universal sales and call center, and I spent more time handling stupid stuff than I did, the next sale, right? So I
Right.
think that's a real opportunity for growth. I do think dispatching trucks. There's some great software out there, so you should look at that first before you go to AI, right to AI. But that is a great opportunity to look at pattern recognition on your truck optimization of your routes, or accidents and where they happen and things like that. That's so it can apply to safety, it can apply optimized in there. You can automate a lot of your dispatch. And then I think your inventory management of your ordering all the way to getting rid of dead SKUs. The low performing SKUs at the end of the tail never get the attention they need, and AI you could help with that. So that's inventory analysts could be spend more time working on what's the next big products I should be bringing in versus how do I, do a lot of analysis to figure out which SKUs I need to get out of the door. And AI could even model the return you could get and the trade-offs on that. So those are some examples where you may have a lot of staff.
And so if we take the innovation approach that you're describing, what would be the next step, let's say, on that most recent one you described?
So for sort of inventory, so instead of chumming the whole inventory and churning through it, I pick one supplier and their SKU set. And I build a model and I iterate through it and then meet with the team and say, was this more insightful than we do ourselves? Did we learn anything? Keep tuning it. And then I load the rebates against the inventory. And then I load the sales against that inventory. And then I load the pricing against that inventory. But I keep it to that one supplier and see if I've created a tool that helps me. And then I go, well, maybe I'll try it on another supplier and see if it works. And then I can say, oh, now I've proven on these two suppliers, I have correlated sales to price, to inventory turns, to ordering, to supplier rebates. And I have a better model and I'm going to be smarter the next time I buy. And I can quantify that for the rest of the inventory. So that's what I mean by try it in a pilot.
Right. And now I can do a business case.
Right.
I couldn't do one before I tried it because there was no data, but
Right.
that's where the innovation checkbook comes from. Let's give it a try. Not spend a fortune, but let's try it. And now I do it with a couple suppliers, and I go, hey, now I can do a business case and I can extrapolate. I might not go from 2 to everyone, but I might go from 2 to 20.
Yeah, it may not make sense for the rest. I mean, collide in the rest, it doesn't make sense. I'm not going to bother, right? So, and back to the concept, that takes human intelligence. That takes people thinking that through.
Right.
how to build that model, how to monitor that model, and then what are you going to use those really smart people in inventory? What's a better use of their time rather than monitoring the inventory? I can think of a lot of better uses of their time, right? In terms of what's the next product innovation I need from my manufacturers? Let me go out in the field and see how the product's being used. Let me walk the warehouse and see is it placed in the right place. And maybe I mean, we just need to get people closer to where the action is, I think, and this would help them do that.
So this is a model of freeing people up for higher level function. Is that a fair description?
I think they're doing some of that higher level function today. They just can't do enough of it. I'm sure there's some people that would maybe be displaced if you bifurcated your work. But most people don't have a big enough company. They could say, you do all the meaningless work and you do, the really super duper work. Everybody's got that in their portfolio of work.
Sure.
So I think it's really giving people the opportunity to do the higher level work that they may already be doing or we expect them to do and they never get to. That's maybe too broad and there may be some displacement, but I think that's true. And John, I read a great article today in the New York Times, and I always think it's good to look at other industries. And this was about AI displacing people, but also creating tremendous growth in the cartoon, in the animation industry. And a company, Toonstar, came up with HITL, humans in the loop. So they are not doing it to humans, they're doing it with humans. And you know what? They freed up the people, and it really made sense to me. Apparently, it takes dozens and dozens of hours to sync a human voice to an animated mouth. And they had really creative people spending dozens of hours just doing that work. AI can do that in 15 minutes. So what are they sending those people do? Designing and creating new cartoons, producing it could be an explosion of growth. Right now, they didn't replace the voice; that's still a human voice. The drawing they got partway there with AI, but they still needed the creativity of the artists. But they freed them up to do that, and I was just like, oh, where does that apply? And I love their concept, humans in the loop. We're ask them what they hate to do, right? And then they were like, well, we find this mind numbing. Great, let's apply AI there, right? So,
well, you said this on the prep call, but I hope I get this right. The question is not what will AI do to humans, but what can AI do with humans? Did I get that right?
Yes. Yeah. And so clearly, so they said that years ago there were 500 people doing this work. It could take 50 now. So clearly, but that doesn't mean, what are those other 450 doing? They just lose a job? Because they were actually they didn't just get hired to do matching a voice to an animation. That was just part of their job in addition to doing everything else. So I think that's the thought. And I don't have a great answer for this. I mean, because this is really significant change in how we think about what people do every day. But I think these are the questions we need to start thinking through. I hope that helped, Jonathan. Yeah.
Well, that's great. We had a guest on our show, Travis Malakar from Millcraft. They're in the paper industry. They deliver to commercial printers, institutional players as well. And he talked about hiring for a company that's going to embrace AI. Wonder if you could talk about this, what this means in terms of leadership and talent and change in this. This is really an and model. It's humans and AI, right? What happens with the human element, leadership, talent, organizational change?
Yeah, so I think you have your existing talent and then you have vetting new talent. So I think all new talent needs to embrace technology. And I think that's been part of the question all along, right? And we've seen this with people when we've gone to a new ERP or a new tool. Some people just opt out. They just don't want to do it, right? And I think that'll be true here. So I do think part of the vetting questions is not, are you an AI expert, but what is your attitude towards technology? What is your attitude towards learning? What is your embracing of something new and different? That's what we need to interview for. I don't think there's not going to be enough experts in AI to hire for every position. there just needs to be a capacity to embrace it, I think. Then you need to hire in your tech stack and a few experts in your data and everyone. And you need to hire for risk, because AI has a dark side, and we can talk about that. As an audit committee chair, I spent a lot of time dealing with reading all the awful things it can do, right? So you have to have someone in the business who can think about all the what can go wrongs. And usually those people are sitting, ironically, in finance or internal audit or in other jobs that have to think about risk. And you need to hire a few people for that, and especially in IT, so they protect the company as well from what can happen. So I think those are niches of areas you really need to think about beefing up, but the rest is about aptitude and willingness for change, which is harder to interview for, but I think there's ways you could even use AI to vet that out in the resumes that you're getting. So
A little mini Turing test there.
yeah.
Does willingness and aptitude become a basis for continuation with the company at some point?
I do. I think it has been for a while. I mean, having gone through several iterations of upgrades of technology with existing teams that were doing manual work or something, I would say it was kind of an 80-20 in the good way. 80% were fine, and 20% was, I really don't want to do this. And then we look and say if there's something else we can do, or they wanted to do it, but they really didn't. So you have to identify classic situational leadership, willing and able, right? Are they willing to do it? And are they able to do it? Most people, if they're willing, can become able, but some people just don't want to, right? And if they don't, there's kindness to recognizing that and finding somewhere else where they can add value, or saying, let's part ways in a meaningful way. But as so much technology has been input on people, in recent years, I don't see much of that inability to step up to the next big technology challenge. So I think it's waning as a problem. I think it's still a problem, but it's waning. So
There's a terrific book that came out a couple of years ago called Astro Ball. You can best think of it as Moneyball 2.0. And what the Astros did was they applied analytics, and there's probably some AI in there. It's certainly by now, if not at the time they wrote the book, all the way through the organization, from how do we apply analytics to motion mechanics of how a batter swings to a pitch? How do we apply analytics to game time decisions? How do we apply analytics to how scouts do their work? And this was a great example of the and situation. You can imagine the scout, and it's easy to visualize the scout probably got a toothpick in his mouth, maybe a little bit of a pot belly, thinking he's got all the expertise in his viscera, and no AI system or analytic system is going to tell him what to do. What the Astros successfully did was they figure out how to put these things alongside one another.
brilliant.
It is absolutely brilliant. It's a great book, by the way. I should warn you, it's a little bit. It's got a little. Got a number of F-bombs in it. It's very piquant the way the guy writes. The book is absolutely brilliant.
Well, that's it. It's just Moneyball was on last night, and every time it shows up when I'm flipping channels, my husband and I just stop to watch it. So this it's a fascinating story. I'll read it, and I'm duly warned on the blue language that you share. I think that you bring out, right? And I do think at the end of the day, people want to come in and help the business that they work for. Right. And if you don't do it to them, so I think the worst scenario, it sounds like they were very good at change management. They didn't just do it to them and say, here's the tool, thou must use it. Right. They embrace them in the change in some way. I got to think, I may be leading the witness here, John, but is that true?
100%. 100%.
Yeah. So to the point, I mean, it's like the worst thing you could do is, people in a back office go back to this innovation and they have an idea for customer service and they don't have a single customer service person on that innovation team. And they go, look what we came up with, and we're going to descend on you with this, and thou shalt use it. First of all, it's probably designed poorly because they didn't get the right input. And secondly, now it's done to them. Well, of course you're going to have the antibodies, the natural antibodies go. But if you had customer service people that people respect on the team, God bless, you're going to have adoption.
I think, there's a certain amount of agency that employees have to show in this time, right? So you'd use the cartoon example, and it reminded me of what happened when Disney switched from hand illustration to computer animation, right? And they did retain, they retrained some of their uh, artists to use computers to do animation, but they didn't need as many as they had before. So there were significant layoffs. Um, but the animators who jumped in and learned it aggressively and embraced the technology, they still had jobs with Disney and spent many more years working there in many cases, right?
Yeah.
It was the ones who fought the change or didn't embrace it aggressively who wound up getting laid off and looking for something else. And so you can, rage against the machine, right? Or you can say, well, look, not everyone's going to be standing when this is over, but I want to be one of them. And I want to embrace it as fast as possible. I think that's what's going to happen with AI, where there are going to be fewer seats when it's over. But if you want to raise your odds of having one of them, you need to be early and aggressive in adopting the technology.
And I think we can help our people with that
Right.
through awareness. It's not just training on a tool. That the training comes, if you think about the change curve, shock, anger,
Yeah.
rejection,
Sure.
acceptance, hope, the Sarah model.
Yeah.
How do you mitigate that curve? It's awareness, is explaining what you're doing, is that you make some maybe bold statements that we may hire less, but we're not planning to displace anybody. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's worth some of those things depending on the nature of your culture, and we need your involvement to help us understand where we can grow this company more with your talent and get rid of the work and hand it off to automation. And AI is just another form of automation. And I think that awareness and education and comfort that I'm part of the solution here versus I'm the next victim of technology is a
Yeah.
really important messaging and
Right.
thoughtfulness that has to go into this.
Yeah. Yeah. And
When we started the first AI conference, we led off with this idea of fear and excitement, flip sides of the same coin, right? And I was giving talks around the country at that time on AI to different associations. There was a lot of fear in the room. You could feel it in, say, early 23 or sometime in early 24. Fast forward 18, 24 months, we saw it at the last conference. By the way, you were there, you were amazing. And it really had flipped over to the excitement side of things for many people at the conference. Now, how that translates to the rank and file, I think that's part of what you're describing. But at core, there's an old reptilian brain fear of I'm going to lose my job, not going to have income, and that leads to some kind of death fear. So I think what you're describing is how do you get in front of that with potentially bold but honest statements about what we're going to do.
Exactly. I mean, you nailed it. And I do think you need a small cadre of people who think about the risk. So they need to wake up scared of AI. So there is a dark side, and I don't want to diminish that. There's a risk profile because the bad actors are using AI to hack the companies. There could be a nefarious IT person who puts this just happened actually with a very popular public messaging where someone didn't like the answers. The executive didn't like the answers it was giving, so it altered the code. Hilariously and scarily, every answer then, whether it was what should I have for lunch today, introduced this political concept.
I
You should
heard that.
have a toasted sandwich,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so
I
you
know
do
what you're
need
talking
you
about.
need the
Right.
right kind of fear about this. And I'm pivoting a little, John, that you do need people to think about the what could go wrong. So as you roll this out, and you do need to train people on what AI could do bad to them as well,
Yeah.
internally or more externally. And I do think being very honest on both sides of that, it's just like you have to train on cyber, and phishing and
Sure.
everything else. That's all just gotten smarter,
Yeah.
right? So I think it's the right fear, not the wrong fear, that we need to have of new technology and how to manage it. Um, and then there's considerations you have to overcome of like, well, I don't want one of these huge data centers in my backyard, and by you adopting AI, how do you
Yeah.
think about that? And everybody has to think about the
Or the nuke to support it.
right, right, the sustainability
Right.
footprint and
Right.
the
Right.
and
Right.
everything going on. So
Right.
What does this look like for smaller distributors?
So I think, well, first of all, if just like any large distributor, I think small distributors have a bigger opportunity, honestly. They because they can maybe leapfrog some technology steps. They still need a good data set. They may, it'd be nice if they had a modern ERP, but they don't have to. It actually can replicate some modern ERP functions with legacy as long as you got the data in one place for what you need the use case to be. And they tend to be more agile and compile it quicker. And the cost has come down so much that it's embedded in the Microsoft suite or a lot of the suites that they have. So use what's free or low cost and see what you can do with it. And I would still do cross-functional, but that could be, very easy to do in a small distributor. So I think it's a way for them to play bigger.
Interesting. And so that could be both efficiency as well as the customer experience they create.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's interesting how, this could be an opportunity for smaller distributors to actually close capability gaps with bigger distributors. And I don't know about you, Jonathan, but my sense is a lot of these AI tools are rapidly coming down the cost curve. They're expensive to begin with, but they seem to be cheaper to develop in some ways, or you can use the backbone of an LLM to build a capability on top of. I mean, this is you two's areas of expertise, not mine. But it feels like there's more competition in each area than I've traditionally seen developing more quickly. Is that your impression?
I think the Copilot stuff is broadly available to everybody. I mean, that's
Okay,
like there, right? You get
right,
reminders about Copilot kind of functionality all the time.
right,
But then I think the next piece is the AI enabled applications. And we're
right,
seeing stuff that are point solutions around the ERP, but also seeing the AI enablement of the ERP. So
right.
looking to your tech suppliers, your tech vendors, to Janet's point, is probably another way these smaller companies, they don't have to innovate. They're not going to create an advanced analytics AI group that's got 10 or 12 people in it, right? But they can rely on what's available through the broad technology vendors as well as the purpose-built players for distribution.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we probably should wrap up. Any last thoughts before we do so, Janet? We'll,
Well, I'm very excited about the conference and meeting everyone there. So I do encourage everyone to sign up because these are the kind of conversations that we'll have on the panel, but also in
yeah,
the hallways, I think,
yeah,
in the lunch tables. So there's the presentations, but I think the value of your conference is getting like-minded people in a room
yes.
talking about these issues. And I just always love the energy in your conferences, Ian. So that's my closing comment. I'm really looking forward to that energy and the lasting relationships you can build. I mean, from the
Yeah,
last conference, I'm still talking to a few people,
yeah.
and we continue the thoughts forward.
Yeah, one of the things Jonathan points out is that when you go to distribution conferences, often it's like a bunch of technology laggards. This conference is the exception. This is the one where all the most progressive technology thinkers in distribution show up. So I agree with you that the network, I mean, we work really hard to put together a great program, but nothing is more valuable than this networking that happens in the hallways and at breaks and at tables.
Yeah.
So,
And I just, add it's Dina Stanton, Paul Kennedy, Tracy Dewell, and myself will be on that panel, but we'll be around as well.
yeah.
And I'll be there for the whole conference. And bring your questions. It's not all about answers. I think we're in the space of, that's where human intelligence is the best, is the next question no one's ever thought of. So,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Right, right. You said that because AI is used to identifying patterns, and that's not where the new stuff comes from.
that's
That's
right.
what you, right. I got that from you. So, all
Janet,
right.
Janet, I knew a rabbi who designed a final exam for an academic class that he taught. The exam was write down all the questions.
Ooh, that's interesting.
I love that.
Yeah, very deep, right?
That would have helped me. I never knew the answers.
But you better be able to ask good questions.
What's the meaning of the universe?
Yeah, 42. I read that in a book.
I'd
Hey,
rather figure out inventory, my gosh.
hey, everyone, hold on for just a second. I want to tell you about a couple of upcoming programs. We've got one on June 4th called Maximizing Sales Through Online Marketplaces. We'll have additional panelists, but right now we have Tracy Bilo, who is the VP of Category Management at Zorro. Friend of the company. Tracy's very, very capable and smart. We're really looking forward to having her on the panel. And on June 5th, we have our next episode of AI News and Gurus, featuring our co-host Brian Hopkins and friend of the company Brooks Hamilton. So you do not want to miss those events. Janet, thank you so much. It was so great to talk to you. We'll see you in Chicago here in about a month. Jonathan, great hosting with you as always, my friend. And everyone else, take care. Thanks for joining us on Wholesale Change.